Joining us, the Board of Education included. Oh, the press is here. Camera guy's here. Okay, sorry we're a little late. We're held up by another matter. Mrs. Milton, would you call the roll, including the Board of Education?
Mr. Orris?
Here.
Mr. Bowman?
Here.
Mr. Goff?
Here.
Mr. Lynn Harris? Present. Ms. Nichols? Here. Mr. Rocco? Mr. Slocum? Mr. Talbot?
Oh,
Here.
And Mr. Villabur?
Here. Mr. Slocum is here.
I know it is. Wait. Ms. Hardwick? Here.
Hellright.
Ms. Hannigan? Ms. Fabiani? Oh, here. Ms. Batty and Mr. Grippo?
Here.
Thank you.
Did you get one of Miss Fabiani?
Oh, yeah, I did.
she's Adam Grippo.
Yep. To start with, Maryland.
Yeah, see? You picked that thing over here for a seat, not a.
I got 20 on Maryland on this one.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now, while we were all getting adjusted, we were handed a handout, which I assume you gentlemen would like us to follow along.
Yes, please. Pay attention
For starters,
Please.
and we do appreciate that, and so I guess we'll let you have at it.
Well, obviously, you know, we were before you a couple weeks ago sharing an overview of our budget. This is just, again, a small summary of that to kind of get to the high points for everybody and maybe serve as a jumping off point for conversation, questions. If you want to just walk through the slides again, we didn't want to, go through the full theatrics of another presentation projected up on the screen, but everybody has a copy. The second slide you see is the, overall budget request from the Board of Education, and an increase of $1.9 million to the tune of 2.83%. And what that addresses is projected. It's, like I said the other night, it's a very odd enrollment situation where the enrollment at the elementary and high school are going up slightly, and the middle is going down significantly. The special education needs that we have are certainly increasing, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in this overview. The additional staff and hours needed and requested in this budget is a net of one teacher over where we are in our budget for this year. We added math coaching positions, one math coaching position at the middle school. We added a special education teacher who is a person to facilitate our therapeutic program in the middle school, and we'll talk about the importance of that position as well. We eliminated technology coach, high school science position, and 2 middle school teaching positions due to the enrollment.
Do medical
Yeah,
benefits just
yeah,
very quickly.
please.
So in the budget that's been put forward, approved by the Board of Ed to the council, we actually are decreasing our medical benefits line item by $100,173. So the recommendation originally from the superintendent, obviously which came through me, was to increase our medical benefits line by about 3%, based on expected claims over the next year. Plus our stop loss premiums are going up about 15%. However, we have a very healthy medical benefits reserve. As you see here, as of the end of February, the medical benefits reserve was $3,518,933. So we have about 4.85 months worth of claims. So the board, when they passed the budget, decided that it was safe to reduce this line item by $400,000. So we're actually budgeting $100,000 less for medical benefits in 18-19 than we have budgeted in 17-18. So it's a calculated risk. I think it is a safe risk. The other thing just to note is we did decrease our budget in 17-18 from the prior year by, about $600,000, and that is as a result of a number of improvements we've made, within our plans. We have 320 of our employees are now in an HSA out of a population of just under 500. So, 2/3 of the employees are in an HSA. All our employee groups, we have 5 unions, all essentially have the same HSA plan. It's a $2,000, $4,000 deductible HSA. So it's increased in all the contracts that we have, including the administrator contract that was mediated last year, and also the secretary's contract that was arbitrated. So, the deductible went up from $1,500, $3,000 to $2,000, $4,000. So that's how we were able to reduce the budget this year. And again, we still have a healthy medical benefits reserve, so we think we're safe there. The only other point that I wanted to mention, which is breaking news, and it's a caution both on the Board of Ed and the town side as it relates to medical benefits, but there was some new interpretation done that statins, which are medications that fight cholesterol, Lipitor, statins are now considered to be preventative, and therefore, within an HSA or a PPO plan, there are no costs to the employee if they're generic. So that essentially is a cost shift from the employee back onto the employer plan. Now, some of those statins, even though they're generic, could be as much as $90 to $100 per month. So we are getting an estimate of what the impact is going to be, but it's not $1 million. It could be in the range of $100,000 per year.
I mean, we don't pay
across
for
the town.
toothpaste. I mean, why is that? That's just
Well, from what I understand, and I don't have all the details on it, but it's considered preventative. If it fights cholesterol, it would reduce future risk of heart disease. And so the new interpretation says it's preventative, therefore it's at no cost. And this is part of an interpretation of the Affordable Care Act. Same thing for like baby aspirin is also, even though it's not over the counter, but those would be free to the employees.
right.
A number of other things along those lines. So this is a new reg that went into effect January 1st of 18. So we just found out about it, and we're trying to get some more detail.
Please.
Can I ask a question? Because I'm concerned about us. When you say free, every one of our generics, we pay for some amount of money toward. So when you say free, what do you mean?
Well, if it's in an HSA, the cost of even a generic goes against the deductible.
Okay. But you still pay, the employee is still paying for the generic.
No, not under this new interpretation.
Because we have no generics that I know of right now that are free. Unless I'm mistaken.
Yes,
must-
you do.
You do now.
So in other words, okay,
Yeah,
I didn't
this-
understand the word free, because
When I
every
say
one of
free-
our generics is
Yeah,
a
it's not free-
copay of 5 or 10 at the
Yeah.
counter.
That's
And this will be free as in nothing.
Zero.
No cost to the employee,
Zero, okay, I'm
but
sorry.
the cost
First
is
time
borne
I-
by the employer
Okay, so it is free
to the employee.
to the employee, no 5, 10,
Assuming what I'm telling you is right,
Now, who
okay.
yes.
did the misinterpretation?
I think it was the IRS interpretation. Yeah.
Okay,
I will get,
thanks.
again, it's breaking news, I'll,
I guess it
as
is.
soon as I have more information, we did reach out to a
Why
consultant
I
from
didn't
your
understand the
side
word free.
and our pharmacy manager. So again, it's not a big risk, but it is an additional cost. So I know that when we talk budget, we always look to see, can we, reduce the reserves? I know we have healthy reserves on the town side and the Board of Ed side, so just keep that in mind as we look at, potential cuts to the budget.
Can I ask another question, sir? I would think that our medical benefit consultant could identify for us pretty quickly what we're paying for right now in terms of the statins.
We asked.
Yeah, okay, so he's
We
getting it
asked
for
Tom,
both of us?
yes,
Okay.
yes.
All right, good, thank you.
And then the last budget assumption that's built in is we do have 75,000 for Chromebook purchase for the 9th grade coming into Cheshire High School, and that is consistent with what we've been doing for the last several years. So, once this purchase is made, assuming it is, then all 4 grades at Cheshire High School will have Chromebooks. So we will have had Chromebooks, from grades, 7 through 12 in the hands of the students as part of the one-to-one Chromebook program.
I mentioned in the introduction the increased cost of special education. The next slide speaks to that in the sense that our enrollment numbers have been declining overall, yet our special education number of students, the percentage of students who receive special education has increased by a relatively subtle amount over the last 5 or 6 years in terms of sheer numbers, but as a percentage with the overall enrollment going up, that seems to take a more significant leap. It now accounts for 25% of our overall budget, special education related costs.
Overall budget?
Of our overall budget, yeah, 25%. It's incredibly expensive to address those services and needs. The next slide illustrates what the identifications are of those 529 students within our district. It kind of gives you a sense of the diversity of supports that we're providing for students. What we work to do within our schools is provide those supports for our students in the school system. That requires a lot of creativity on our part. It requires space and resources to do that. As I talked about the other night, though, I think there are many benefits to that sort of approach. First and foremost is that we provide a high level of instruction for some of our neediest students, and that we're able to do that in our own community rather than sending students out of the community for those services and supports at a higher cost, and in many cases not a better service. So we've worked over the last several years to focus on how do we provide those needed supports to students that we had been sending kids out of district for in-house. And what the next slide illustrates is that Cheshire has an incredibly low percentage of students who receive outplacement. This 17-18 school year, we're at 2.87% of our overall student population receives outplacement supports. That's incredibly below. The average is roughly about 5 to 6% of other districts in Dirt B. So when you look at the costs that we're saving there, it's roughly about $3.4 million.
Can I ask a question for that? We send students out to places that have specific needs met in another
Correct.
program. Do
Yep.
we ever take students in that are not our own Cheshire residents to our programs?
Yes,
And
we
if
do.
so, do we get paid for that?
Yes, we did.
Okay.
We, this year, we created a transition program. We're required to provide what's called transition services that bridge to adulthood for students with specific disabilities, 18 to 21-year-old services. And we created a program through Quinnipiac in partnership with them to support those transition services. We have students certainly within Cheshire that require those services. This year, we realized that there were a couple of spots available, and other communities had already contacted us about the potential of having students attend our program. So we do have a few students from out of town who attend the QU transition program and pay tuition.
Is that part of the 529 students that you're referring, or is that a different, what did you tell us, there were 500 students in Cheshire?
Oh, yeah, no, that's not
This is a
included in
separate-
our,
that's a
yeah, no,
separate-
that's not our student count.
Okay.
And the money when other districts pay us tuition, it goes
Yeah.
directly to the town
Okay.
in revenue,
Okay.
so. Then you want to talk a little bit about maintenance and operations?
Okay, if you want me to.
You asked for it.
I can have Michael Torelli do it, but, so the age of our buildings we know is, on average, we're about 66 years old. The buildings as they age more, require not only more maintenance, but they also require more capital investments, which we do in a separate budget. The funding that we've had on the maintenance side between our operating budget and our capital budget, has really been things that we have to do, but we haven't taken our buildings further along in terms of modernization. I know the council, Board of Ed, and other, people in this audience know that a facility master plan, was prepared for the school district. That still is an important component of what I believe our community has to do. And this slide, I know that council members have seen it before, but in this budget, it really, we asked for about 75,000 more in just operating, budget maintenance cost. It's minimal, we're trying to keep the building in good shape, but we're not making a lot of improvements within our maintenance budget that's been requested. And, within our maintenance budget and our capital budget, when we come to the council in June, we'll submit to the town manager and speak to the council in August. We do have additional school security improvements that will be requested. So, maintenance is always a pressure point for our budget. We do the best we can, but we're not doing enough to improve, and over time, we will need to start investing more heavily.
And I had a question. Are you still on that topic, or are you moving on?
Go ahead. No, you can, yeah.
Do we, I know there were some charter changes about how you present your budget. I couldn't cite them verse and verse, but were they impacted with the way this budget was developed? Because I thought we were going to be able to see over time how each school was budgeted, what its operating costs were. Do we have that level of detail somewhere?
No, that is the initiative the state was working on.
Oh,
Is that
that's
what you were referring to? Yeah, that was the state uniform.
I was aware of it. I thought it was a good idea,
Yeah,
particularly.
the state had an initiative, still does, called the Uniform Chart of Accounts. They had hired a consultant, several years ago to do that, and then, ultimately the determination was made that, the way to do this is through an in-house system that the state is bringing online, next fiscal year, called EFS, it's the electronic, I think it stands for Electronic Finance System, which will provide an additional level of detail that we don't have today reported in a certain format for all school districts across the state.
So you don't even really know what ours is, in other words, is that what you're telling me? Because I don't really care about everybody else's necessarily, I just wondered if we had a level of detail that could point to,
Cost center.
what God costs the community, as an operating unit versus,
We can extract
okay,
some line items. I mean, we do keep some line items
Okay.
by school, but, just as an example, general overhead
Right.
is not, maintained by school, so it would take some work to do that.
yeah, well, I'm not asking you to do
Sure.
extra work,
Yeah.
but I wondered if there was some basis of better understanding because it's too hard to come by.
Things like staffing, bigger ticket items, we could probably identify generic numbers by building, but as Vince said, a lot of the overhead,
Yeah,
ceiling tiles,
Right.
for example, we buy them at a district level
right.
and disseminate as needed.
Right,
We're
right.
not buying by
Or even our
building.
capital projects
Yeah.
distributed by
Yeah,
need or whatever.
because you're trying to build efficiencies
Right.
by products that are distributed throughout the district. So we don't have it to that fine a level.
Okay.
The next slide addresses our per pupil expenditures for DERG. It's something I know that, we've shared for many years. We illustrate this, that to drive home the point that we are a very lean organization, that what you see there in the blue, the baby blue there is the, just as you can kind of see by the size and the bars, the blue represents the local contribution of the per pupil expenditure as a percentage. The green that you see represents the state contribution through ECS funding. It's kind of hard to read that at the bottom. It shows it at the bottom, but it's still a little tough to read in that size font. So our per pupil expenditure net, the ECS contribution, we're second to the bottom in DIRG B at 13,707 in terms of taxpayer contribution locally for our per pupil expenditure. On the next slide, you see our relative staffing level. So these are certified staff members within the 21 district reference group B school systems. We were 20th out of 21 in terms of the number of students per teacher. It's not just classroom teachers, all certified staff in the district. Yet on the next slide, if you look, we rank 17th in Connecticut on this factor of return on our investment. When you look at the SAT being kind of a end of educational career assessment for our students in the spring of their junior year, divide that out by our per pupil expenditure. We are in the top 25 SAT scores in Connecticut, and we are in 17th on per pupil expenditure relative to SAT performance. So I share that to illustrate the fact that we are very cost conscious. I think we're spending our money in the right ways to impact student learning over time and provide our kids a great learning experience, but also a great life experience. We're very sensitive to providing, as you know, social emotional supports, providing artistic and athletic opportunities. So we want our students to have a well-rounded experience in the Cheshire schools, and I think by many measures we have delivered that through your support over the years.
Very good. Any questions for the gentleman? What else did the board go after, look at carefully when they looked at your budget, because obviously you present first. Were there any fights? Were there any scuffles? Or was there just general appreciation for what you've done?
I think that what we looked at first was what are our goals? What are we trying to move toward? And we always start with complex thinking, social emotional learning. Last year we identified a real deficit with our resources around social emotional learning, and that's why we focused on providing those supports. This year I think there were really two main points that we were looking at. One is our class sizes, and where are we now? Where are we in this budget? How does that look? I talked about this being an increase of 1.2 positions over our current budgeted number. We have 4 positions that we had reduced coming into the year, knowing that the state was in fiscal free fall and there wasn't a budget. So we reduced the number of positions. Those positions for classroom teachers haven't been restored. We didn't want to be in a position where the state comes down midway through the school year, as many of our colleagues have endured, and says, hey, you don't have the revenue. And now the town is saying, well, do we do a special tax assessment? Do we cut teachers mid-year and move those kids into other people's classes and create chaos for those? We were out ahead of that, made reductions. Those positions are added back in this budget, which takes us to a class size next year that is this current year's adopted budget. Our class average was 18 students. Next year's adopted budget with those positions in it is 17.9. So it's not, it's not moving the needle in that respect by adding, these positions back in. The other area that we spent a lot of time talking about was the medical benefits piece. And in the first, after the introductory slide, the first real slide here, it talks about a $400,000 reduction. And I think there was a lot of deliberation around what is an appropriate number there. And Vin already talked about making that reduction of 400,000 being a number that we felt wasn't too risky. Anytime you're talking about being self-insured and, you're one really bad claim month away from being in more trouble. And I know that, the people like yourself that have been around and seen the board go through a really tough time with not being able to cover medical expenses with fear of that. I think we're a little bit more sensitive to that. So we did settle ultimately on that $400,000 number based on the claims that we had, a couple months ago. Who knows where we'll be in June? Fingers crossed that, we'll continue to ride in a positive manner. I think a lot of that is due to Vin and our union leadership all shifting over to HSA. It's been certainly fiscally beneficial for everybody.
Peter,
sorry, okay.
Peter and then Dave.
Jeff, I apologize, I held questions at the end, so I have a couple.
It's okay.
The slides, the top of page 6, bottom of page 5, the per pupil expenditures for DIRG B. And this caught my thoughts last night when we were meeting with Public Works, and actually Mr. Bowman brought up the point about in-kind services. Is this a real apples to apples comparison? So, in other words, if Trumbull, for example, is paying for their own lawn maintenance and the town is paying for your lawn maintenance, does that lower your, does that skew the number, so to speak, these in-kind services that are not a direct expense to the Board of Education, where other districts may be including those expenses? And is that one of the reasons why you guys are traditionally at the lower end of the...
Well, if you look at the staffing and the fact that we're at the very bottom of that ratio, I think that's probably the greatest driver.
That's the biggest number,
per pupil
yeah.
expenditure. The lawn maintenance or whatever, any in-kind services like that would have a relatively limited impact on our budget. But I don't know what in-kind services every DIRG B school system has, but I know that the way that per pupil expenditure is calculated is that all school systems in Connecticut have to fill out this form that is very much apples to apples and submit that to the state. That's how we get our staffing and how much money you spent on that. So I'd have to go back and look at something like...
Well, if it's coming from a form, chances are you guys are all plugging in.
It's definitely uniform.
You guys are plugging in the same number, so it probably is a fair comparison.
We have
But it just-
it. We have a copy, and you could talk.
Yeah.
Actually, Jim will talk to this.
No, just
Pass
when,
these around.
Yeah, I mean, Peter.
Yeah,
thank
here's
you for-
the filing that we did
okay.
on that form. I'm sorry, Paul.
Is it just one?
Why don't you just the one, pass them around.
So my question was generated from school resource officers. Fire department conducts monthly drills with each school. Michelle Pecorillo's department performs services to the Board of Education. How are all those costs allocated? And are they included in the number being grossed up? If
Those numbers aren't
if
included in our
these-
per pupil.
Okay, well, so my question is, why wouldn't it be? Because the town should, even if you don't want to include it in this per pupil cost, this really should talk about staffing. Does it say anything about staffing down here? If this is what this number is queued to, it should be qualified. This is only about staffing.
Well, I'll tell you,
There's a bunch
you know-
of other services that are provided by the town of Cheshire that maybe aren't recognized, and maybe there should be a maybe it's $140, per student. I have no idea what it would be, but it may bump us up a little bit in
Yeah.
our per pupil
Well,
spending.
the state, as I indicated, has a uniform way of calculating what districts spend per pupil. And we follow the requirements in that has been set in the 001 form. An SRO, I know that the monthly drills where that's statutory every time.
I understand, but there's a cost to it.
Sure.
So
Yeah, absolutely.
I get all that.
Yeah, I think
the
that's one of
public,
those
the community,
mandates that we.
That's fine, we have a
talk
ton of
about.
unfunded mandates that the
Sure.
state makes us participate in.
Sure.
But my point is,
the cost.
the public should, the residents of Cheshire should be aware of what additional funding we as a town provide to the Board of Ed for other services. Forget the state funding, I'm not comfortable with any of the state funding. I don't know why they do half of what they do, but in any event, I think that's an important number to really see what we spend on our students
Yeah.
as a community.
I would have to work with the other department leaders, in the town to adequately be able to.
Well, I think we need to know it on the town side, because we're, from a fire perspective, state mandated and all that, our fire department, our fire marshals, our fire chiefs are providing a service,
Sure.
which I understand.
Yeah.
The state mandates the fire drills, and God forbid there's a problem, but it's a pretty well-known fact that I don't think it's since 50 years.
If I could just add though,
Jim has a listing of all of the people in all of the departments that we capture. If you want him to speak now,
Go right ahead.
Jim, why don't you just summarize
Yeah,
the departments and the number of
It's
people?
my understanding that the EDO 1 report that the state utilizes, which captures, the school resource officers, fire marshal, other services, public works, building department, my understanding was that all gets captured and included in these comparisons for all districts across the state. So
But Jim, why don't you tell them how many people from each department we are capturing? We have, 25 employees that are,
So,
tell them
just
by
for example,
department.
my office, I think there's 8 people, several which are part-time, but we go through each person and determine roughly what percentage of time they spend on Board of Ed activities. So, just our deputy treasurer, who balances the bank statements and so forth, that time, it's all the Board of Ed transactions, so that would get picked up in this report.
By department, how many people do we have? How many police do you have on the list? Do you have the list with you?
There's several police.
We have everyone in the fire department, right?
Yeah.
The fire marshal, the deputies, the chief.
So there's-
We'll give you the list of titles. There's about 30 of us, and then everybody gives Jim a percentage estimate of their time spent on Board of Education matters. And then we capture their salary, all the fringe benefits, get a gross number for what it costs the town to pay me or to pay him, apply that percentage to it, and then these are the numbers that get submitted. But backing this up is about 2 or 3 pages of detailed information. And so then that gets submitted, so we do capture it. We can't capture the human services stuff because Michelle indicated to us that she is there doing counseling, which she would otherwise be doing here. And so I guess it's not an eligible expense.
So this schedule, just so everybody understands, this is one of the schedules that's directly included in our ED 001, and you can see that it's roughly, including benefits, it's about $365,000 worth of salary and benefits from town support staff that's provided to the Board of Ed that's captured in the schedule. And the schedule is $659,000 because it includes school construction,
It's a bond.
Related
It's a
bonding,
paying
right.
off of a bond, a general obligation bond.
So the question that I asked several weeks ago, this is the answer to that question.
Right, and backing that up is a sheet with everybody's name and all of the salary and benefit information. which I can give you a copy
That's
of.
fine, but we didn't know that. until-
No, right, no, you didn't know that. And this came up as a result of the school security meeting when you said, geez, Michelle is here, you have your fire marshal here, the chief is here. Does this get captured in their budget? It does, but Michelle's time doesn't, with the, yeah, I mean, because it's council.
So this amount we would find on your form as a separate line item?
Yeah, this is a schedule of the
This is
EDO
what
one,
you-
so it's not captured in
So you get
our,
this every year,
we submit this every year to the state.
but you get what the town side gives to you
Oh, yeah.
every year, and it goes to the state.
Oh, yeah.
That would have been a simple answer to a question that was asked a while ago.
I wanted to see the form just to make sure we had the right information to provide.
Okay, thank you.
Top slide on 2, Jeff. The world language, you say this year would be cost neutral. Is there an incremental cost going forward or increased staffing needs as this continues to roll out that you would anticipate may hit future budgets?
I think that not in staffing, but more so in resources potentially.
Any idea of what you're looking at to do that?
Offsetting library time.
Okay. And then the other one, and I apologize for working backwards. The medical benefits trust fund, the 400,000 that was taken off. I know that there was some talk during your budget deliberations within the board, and I apologize for kind of putting Mr. Grippo on the spot, but there was talk of potentially taking an extra 1.1, 1.2 off. If you wouldn't mind, would you tell us where you thought you were going to get additional cuts from?
Sure. So, I found a spreadsheet that I'd saved on my Google Drive.
There you go.
Referencing that.
Adam, would you mind standing up so we could pick you up on the microphone so your
Sure.
information is, everybody can hear it? Thank you.
Let's see. Now, I had originally, my proposals were from January, before we started talking about security or anything like that. And the budget, budget reductions from the proposed increase, so they're actually a decrease of the increase proposed.
Yeah.
My motion proposal was for a total reduction of 1.696 million, which would be a proposed increase of 0.98%. And that included a reduction of the medical benefit trust from the current 4.8 month funding level down to the minimum accepted level of 3 months. And that was $1.31 million. And that is, Ben had explained to me, it's a non-replacement of used resources, I guess. Does that sound approximate?
Well, essentially what you would do is you would reduce your contribution out of your operating budget, and you'd be pulling down your reserve.
Right.
The problem, as we've seen with some members of the council that were here last time, we hit 3 million and we kept pulling out the reserve, is you hit a bad claim year and all of a sudden your reserve goes from, $1 million plus down to 200,000. So it's always best to be judicious about how much of the reserve that you use at any given point in time, so.
And I believe we
That's-
spent
that's-
almost $1 million
Well,
to cover that.
So we had
That was after a
a
number of
few years
yeah.
where we were able to reduce the budget, and then we had a 5% increase, followed by roughly another, 4 and change, I think it was. So painful on the way back up when you had to
Volatility.
catch up.
Right. We did get caught.
We did,
Took a while.
yeah. It did.
The additional reductions I had were, I guess, to not fund proposed staffing proposed staffing that was cut in the year prior, I guess which would be this year. There was a Dodd math consultant for $80,000, an assistant, I think it was an increase in the hours or an assignment of a permanent part-time assistant principal to Norton School for $66,000. And then there were 3 elementary school teachers identified for the 6th grade for $240,000. That was, I believe, $80,000 apiece. That's salary plus benefits. And those were the types of cuts that I felt could still be funded through other revenues that we had existing. There was a population reduction at Dodd, where there's going to be a staffing reduction there. I propose to fund the elementary school positions perhaps with money from there, or a reduction in capital maintenance or something like that. And then just to sort of to soften my proposal a little, which it never made into a motion, was to, I guess you could leave the staffing non-fillable positions, I guess, or not fill the positions that were cut, and then reduce the medical trust reserve to 3.5 months, which, so it wouldn't be as extreme. Perhaps it's, a little safer. And at 3.5 months, that's still a reduction of $946,000, which would be a total increase of 1.5% in education spending. So those were my proposals. And they're all resoundingly rejected, but here they are.
Thank you. Then where does medical benefits trust stand right now?
It's 3 million, it's in the slide, it's 3 million,
Okay.
5 and change.
And how many months is it currently then?
4.85.
Okay.
We don't have March claims yet.
Okay.
That is through February 28th, so.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh, my question, that answers my question, because my question had been, what's the current status trust fund balance, which obviously is now 4.8, that's what you're keeping it at. But but the minimum required is 3 months? Or that's
That's
just?
not a,
requirement?
it's not a requirement, it's
Recommended.
it's recommended.
Sorry, recommended, minimum recommended.
Mr. Morris.
Yeah, if we could chat a little bit about staffing. I see that it looks as though over the next 5 years, you're estimating about a 210 pupil reduction in students. I think from year to year, last year to this year, you're assuming 36
Yeah, that's
less
from
kids in the
35
school
less.
system.
And again, that's from NESDEC, that's the.
Correct.
The agency that we use
Correct.
to make those.
So we're losing
projections.
36 kids, but we're gaining one position basically? Is what it looks like, 1.2 is the net increase?
Over the budgeted, yeah.
Yeah, at least on certified salaries. So I just kind of want to understand this a little bit, if you guys don't mind. It looks like you said you lost 3 teachers due to enrollment in here. So you have a -2 due to a lower enrollment in grade 7.
Yep.
You've lost another one due to enrollment from last year's budget, 17-18. Then there was another one that you just didn't fill due to budget constraints, so I'll leave that out. So let's assume you've lost 3 as a result of enrollment. But then you're adding 5. You're adding a teacher for expansion of the Bridges program, you're adding a teacher to serve as the district math intervention coach, and you're adding 3 more teachers to increase in, looks like to the elementary schools, to smooth out the sizes of those classrooms.
Right.
I wasn't really finished with my question yet, but Ms. Elrice, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I was gonna say yes and no on the 5 teachers there. We had budgeted for this year teachers that we ended up not, we didn't fill them. Those 3 elementary school teachers were in our budget for this year, but never existed.
I get that, but I'm talking actual to actual.
Okay.
I guess, I'm just basing it on what you're showing here. So So my overall general question is, I mean, clearly we're losing enrollment. We're adding to staff, and I guess I'd like to hear a little more of an explanation as to why that's happening. It would seem to me that when you're losing enrollment, there should be an opportunity to reduce staff correspondingly, and that doesn't seem to be happening. And so you talk about this Bridges program, I don't really know a lot about it, and this district math situation, you know, I know we can't get into specifics as to who you hire and how you hire. I mean, is that math situation because there's a problem in the math department and you need to belt and suspender with some other consultant? If we're losing people enrollment, why are we adding to add some consultant in the math department? I just don't quite understand that. So if you guys can just speak to
Sure.
why you're adding the staff in an environment that we're losing enrollment.
Yeah, let's start with, if you don't mind, Bridges, the middle school behavioral person. Several years back, we added a behavioral program at the elementary level, currently housed at Doolittle School. It's called the Bridges Program. It's designed really as an internal support for students who have behavioral needs that have extended beyond what we've been able to provide for in the general education classroom. Typically, that would mean that a student would be outplaced. Outplacement is incredibly expensive, and we prefer to keep kids in our own district. We designed a program in Bridges that provides high-quality supports in-house so the student remains in the district, and it's been effective for us, allowing us to keep kids at home, provide them a better educational experience at a much lower cost than if we had outplaced the student. It's been effective, therefore we want to extend that into the middle school where it doesn't currently have a behavioral intervention program. The high school does. As the needs got to a point where it was either create or spend a lot of money on outplacement at the elementary level, we created
So wouldn't we already have that cost of the outplacement since you don't have this person in that area already? I mean, I assume the behavioral issues are already there. They're not just showing up tomorrow.
No,
So wouldn't you already have that extra cost in your operating budget?
That's a good question. It's more grounded in the students that we have and the needs. It can be weird where we have pockets of need that are greater than others. At the elementary level, we've had over the last few years, a significant increase in the behavioral issues and the behavioral needs. Those students are matriculating up. We've been able to kind of piece it together at the middle school, but now as those students matriculate up, it reaches a fiscal tipping point, reaches a support tipping point where we need to create a program. It's more cost effective and more beneficial to our kids to create the program.
So what you're saying is if we don't add this position, we're still going to have to provide services to these children and we're going to have to outsource it. And we'll
Yeah.
probably see a larger increase in the budget as a result of that? Is that what you're saying?
Definitely.
Okay.
Definitely. And
Thank you.
that's why we move forward with that position.
Thank you.
With the math support, the math performance across the state has been down significantly since the implementation of our SBAC assessments. Where, as we look at our middle school performance, we don't have somebody that provides interventions there. I know Mr. Woods is here, can talk about that as well. At the elementary level, we did have a position budgeted for that, and it hasn't been filled. And in the last 2 years, we haven't filled it this year nor last year. And I'm concerned about the trends of our math performance. So our goal is to fill the elementary and middle school math coaching positions. We do have math intervention support at the high school. That's been revamped in the last 3 years to provide better interventions for kids who need it. But we don't have early intervention at the elementary or middle school level, and that's a focus within this budget, focusing on our complex thinking efforts to provide those supports as kids first start to struggle, rather than wait until high school. We have literacy intervention coaches at the elementary level and at the middle school level for reading. We don't have it for math, and it's an area that we believe we're short. The enrollment piece, like I said, is really unique. And, I have our teacher staffing trends over the last, from 2014 to 2019. We're down over that time, a total of 273 students. We're also down 12 positions on the FTE, full-time equivalent. So we have been reducing our staffing as our student enrollment declines. It's really kind of an oddball niche where you have the fall off of what is our plateauing lower number enrollment at the middle school next year, where that enrollment is down significantly in the middle and high school, or the elementary and high school are actually up over this year in our projections. I would foresee, though, to your point, as years go by and our numbers continue, to reach that lower bar, that our staffing will continue to decrease the way it has historically.
And then a follow-up to get the non-certified staff. I see, our IAs, we've just spiked. And, I mean, it looks like, I don't know how many we've done in the last many years, but it looks like another 11 this coming year. Is all of that mandated?
Yes, through IEPs. And the really unique thing with that, Rob, is that 10 of those people are people that we've hired over the course of this year. Many of them for students who moved into our school system, brought with them an individualized education plan that required an IA support person. And so when the IA support person is called for, we've hired already 10 of these people that we've had to rearrange money out of this year's budget to cover for, looking at their PPTs, their individualized education plan, and our staffing needs moving on to next year. We anticipate needing them plus one IA to adequately facilitate the Bridges program.
But again, to reiterate for me, the group and the public, that is a mandated issue.
Yes,
So
sir.
we're running those numbers up because we're required to
Yes, sir.
provide those services.
Yep.
Gotcha.
And we are trying to, manage the hours as low as we possibly can, but still provide the services that are required. I've just had a couple of things.
I just have two, I have two quick other ones, but if you want.
My question, are those IAs that are going up as a result of, are they included as part of the special education budget, or are they, then this number that you're talking about here for, on this slide, that includes having those 10 extra IAs?
The vast majority of our IAs come out of our special education budget. We also provide an IA in kindergarten, where the needs are a little bit different, with bathroom needs and stuff like that. Every one of our kindergarten classrooms has an IA that's not special ed.
Right.
But I would also say that, our district has worked very hard to try and find ways to resolve costs around IA supports, and we held a summit a few months back where we invited all the special education directors from all the Derby communities to meet at the Board of Education offices, and we talked about what strategies are you using to provide students supports, but develop them toward independence where the IA may not be as necessary. Because that's really our goal, is to create that independence for students that they don't require an IA. And so, we are focused on that for our student development, but also obviously our bottom line.
I'm sorry.
No problem. Just to finish up my few questions. So retirements, do you have any sense where that's going to be this year?
I have one so far. Over the last several years, we've offered retirement incentive packages, and so at this point, our mean age is kind of sliding down to a younger population. But I do have one official retirement so far.
And then the last thing that I really just kind of a global thought. Obviously, we're in a tough financial environment, and we on the government side are certainly trying to do more with less, and I know you all are trying to do the same. There's only so far you can go when it comes to curriculum-oriented stuff, teachers, etc. And Vin, I want to make sure you're listening to this, so I'll wait for Michael to.
I'm sorry, go ahead. Yeah, I just wanted that.
Because this really falls into your area, maintenance, et cetera. I'll call it non-curriculum type stuff. Bless you. You know, we've done consolidations with Park and Rec and Public Works where we've been able to reduce some significant salaries, consolidate, gain some efficiencies, while really not impacting service. Have you worked hard in those non-curriculum areas to, whether it be in maintenance or otherwise, transportation, things of that nature, where we can, you know, you can cut and still get away with maybe saving more money, but providing a similar service? I mean, we've been trying to do a lot of that. I mean, poor Michael, we've been beating him up to a pulp when it comes to that stuff relative to this, and we don't like doing it, but it's necessary in these days that we're living in. So I just, you know, I just need to ask that question. I hope you guys are working hard in those areas, because I don't see a lot of reductions. You know, I haven't seen you come to us, and, I mean, I guess it wouldn't be to us, it would be to your Board of Ed to say, we can gain these efficiencies if we consolidate this section of our maintenance crew or what have you, and we can eliminate a salary and benefits and all that and still provide the same service. Are you thinking along those lines?
I mean, we've been doing it, you know, over the years. We've eliminated, you know, a couple of maintenance positions over the last few years. We've eliminated a couple of secretarial positions. We just reduced a library assistant position at Highland, you know, this week from a 35 to a 30-hour position. So, you know, I can assure you, everything that crosses my desk, you know, gets looked at, and to the extent we can make, you know, if not a staff cut, an hour reduction, you know, we are doing that. And then obviously, the things that we do routinely, you know, procurement, always looking at ways where we could, you know, reduce our costs, and, you know, things, you know, to the extent of, you know, signing up with Amazon for free prime shipping has, you know, saved us a few $1,000s a year, because now we're buying books that we ordinarily bought with shipping. Now there's no shipping, you know, plus you get a better discount on Amazon. We have a business account with them that's tax-free. You know, our electricity, you know, purchase, you know, for next year, you know, we just went to bid, and it looks like we got a really, you know, good price for the next 4 years. So I know you're not going to hear it, because, you know, we report in through Jeff and the Board of Ed, but those are opportunities, always looking at it,
Reduce the
you know,
bus
every day.
this year at, you know, a significant cost.
And I'm not suggesting you're
No,
not
I
doing
know.
it, I just think it's important for the public to hear it too, that, you know, you guys are trying to do the same things that we're doing on our side of the street, so.
Yeah, I mean, the budget, the transportation budget is a good example. As enrollments decreased, and we've worked hard, and, you know, I do thank, you know, the parents. As we've consolidated bus stops, we've eliminated, you know, 3 bus routes. Each bus route is $50,000 a year. Unfortunately, offsetting that are increases in special ed transportation, which is very expensive. So, you know, there's always some give and take.
Is that what you have on here, Vin, that says bus driver hours under the slide, the top slide on number 2, where you talk about the staffing? That's special ed then?
Yeah, we have to do, you know, part of the transition program includes this, you know, school and work study service. So we are transporting a lot of students now to get career, you know, not counseling, but actually develop a career for when they finish at age 21. So, you know, that's a cost driver.
And that's part of the QU program then?
Correct. Right. And that is mandated now,
To
too.
the transportation though, I saw you were adding one driver/transportation aide. What is that?
The aide is the person that sits on the bus, if the student needs.
But we're increasing that by 1 position this year. Enrollment, I mean,
Yeah, but again, it's special ed related. So,
Okay, that's-
just always, the thing that, even though our student enrollment overall is going down, the special ed enrollment is increasing.
okay,
you know,
so that's what it's geared
That's a
for.
pressure
And
point.
the last
for us.
question I have for you, extracurricular participation fee in your budget, you haven't assumed you're increasing that any?
No, we did that this year,
Yeah.
I
so we didn't
know.
recommend it for next year.
Right, that's what I'm saying, you just did it, you're not, in
We're
this
not
budget,
recommending an
you're not
increase.
doing it again. Okay, thank you. That's all I have, thank you.
No.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ben.
Yeah, okay. Although almost every
I
other
heard
question
you
I've
say,
had.
I heard you say that, the answer to that question.
Yeah,
Steve, I
no.
apologize.
thunder.
No, yeah, it was, but I did, because I was a little confused at this. In your book, you had said that it was restoring 4 unfilled elementary positions for the 5th and the 6th grade. This says the increase of 3 elementary, so I wasn't sure if that was the 4 unfilled or whether or not there was a reduction. So that confused me.
No, it is for,
And
so
it's, so is
What?
4 and is,
we,
but
we,
Vinnie was saying something else.
but no, we reduced 4 classroom positions
Mhm.
at the start of the summer
Mhm.
to insulate from the state budget woes.
Mhm.
Our enrollment increased, like, it was second grade in North, and we had to hire another person to cover that. But I also have the elementary math coach that I referenced that.
Well, let's see, but this was saying, restoring the 4 unfilled elementary positions to reduce class size in 5th grade from 24.5 to 18.9 students, and in
Right.
6th grade from 22.1 to 19.
That's correct.
Okay, so, and with the 4, is it 2 and 2, or is it 3 and 1? Is that what it, I mean, there's more of a class size reduction that you're estimating for 5th grade, so I wasn't sure if the 4.
So, if you, the enrollment by elementary grade is in the enrollment section of the
Right.
budget book, but the 5th grade, you know, remember, this year's 5th grade becomes next year's 6th grade, so as you move it up, so if we do it grade by grade, 6th grade, right now, this year is staffed with 14 teachers, it goes to 17 next
Okay.
year. And the class size this year is 22.1. By going up to 17, it goes down to 19.1. 5th grade goes from 13 this year to 15 next year, so we're increasing 2 teachers. Your enrollment goes from 24.5 this year to 18.9 next year. So that's, as you move the classes, and when we set the staffing, you know, we do that based on the grades moving up and the NESDEC projections that we have. So we look at each grade for what it needs, and, you know, it's not perfect science, you know, so, you know, we try not to get too high in any grade or too low, but as you look across the schools, you know, you'll see that, you know, in 5th grade, for example, because of Chapman only has 3 classes, you'll have a class of 16, 17, 17, but then when you look at Highland, you know, in that same grade, we have 19, 20, and a 21. So it's not exact. You know, just kind of to echo your point, even though student enrollment's going down 35 students, if it were all going down in one grade, it would be really easy. You just can take 2 teachers out, but it's 35 students spread across K through 12, so it's never exact enough. But I just want to, you know, reiterate the point that we look at each grade and each school and make sure that we have enough and not too many teachers, so you don't want your class size too big, but you don't want it too small either.
Okay, thank you. And I was gonna ask about the 10 IAs also, so I just wanna make sure that I understood something that you said, and I appreciate Rob bringing that up. Because your special ed number is not changing from last year to this. So all of the 10 that are included in this budget had already been hired throughout the year. And
This
that's
year.
what, this year, and that's why that number of students is 529 for last year and this year.
Yes.
Thank you.
No, you go ahead.
No, I was just.
You were
Oh, no,
first.
I was just thinking about, it. So are you saying you don't need more IAs this year, or you don't know whether you're gonna need more?
It's really on those 10.
Yeah.
Right, the 10, but in addition to those 10, are you not projecting more than 10? More?
We're
you
we're
think it was-
projecting an 11th for the
11
Bridges program.
Right, but you're
But,
not predicting like suddenly you're gonna go from 10 to 20 at this point.
no, but we don't know, I mean,
But you don't
if kids
know.
moved in,
That's right.
or if kids moved out, that number is, you know, something that changes on a year-over-year basis. I think 10 this year is an anomaly for us, it's high, but it's, You know, it's not something I would predict happening again next year, although it could. I don't know.
Two questions. Workers' compensation. What's our total budget do you think we spent on workers' comp?
Well, it's 3 and change.
That's all right. The point is, and I've heard this recently, and I don't know if the town side has looked at this as well, but apparently, the rates have dropped significantly. Is anybody aware of that?
Our rates for next year didn't drop based on the, well, I take that back. We just, the budget for workers' comp is $349,050, but when we prepare our budget, it's before we get audited final rates from KERMA. So I'm not sure.
Yeah,
Did
we
get-
are expecting some savings. I think it probably
Yeah.
will be both town and Board of Ed. And
Yeah, I was watching the Access
Hopefully-
channel, and there's some
And that's-
people from the state that was saying that they lobbied through with effort to reduce all of the workers' comp rates. Now, that doesn't, obviously your experience might, and there's other factors, but
Yeah.
the general base rates have gone significantly down.
Yeah, I mean, we're hoping for a decrease. Last year was decreased 20,000 from the time we prepared the budget to the time the budget got approved, so, I mean, our experience has not been poor the last couple of years, so hopefully we'll see an improvement there.
And the final question I have is, how many students come from out of district into our district?
30 through Project Choice.
Okay, and this, we're reimbursed by the state for that?
3,000 per student, and then to the extent there's any special ed related costs, we're reimbursed for that as well.
At 100% level for the special ed?
Yes, in that case,
Isn't it over the per pupil expenditure? What's it, 4.5 times?
no, not for open choice. Open choice services are reimbursed to us. The 4.5 times is, with the
Excess cost
excess cost
Are those
reimbursement.
students spread over the various schools, or are they certain ages, or how does that work?
Spread throughout the district, in all schools. We bring students in typically on like a K-2 grade level. Unfortunately, my experience as a principal, I think they add great value to our school system and to the experience for our kids, but getting up when they have to, those kids wake up at ungodly hours by the time they get to high school to get on a bus here, because the bus will leave New Haven at like 5:15 in the morning, or maybe not quite that early, but not far off of that, make stops in like Camden, and then come up to Cheshire for a 7:25, 7:30 drop off at CHS. I mean, that's very difficult for kids to stick with and matriculate and graduate from CHS. But so in my experience as a middle school principal, you start to see some kids fall off with the earlier times, and then as a high school, it's really tough to see kids stick it out the full way. Next year, we haven't opened any seats K-2 because of where our enrollment is in consultation with the principals, and that hurts. We would like to, but we haven't opened up additional seats for fear that it would tip us over in terms of needing more staff.
Can I ask Paul for that specific
Yeah,
issue?
absolutely.
Can you just explain to us the requirements for that? I mean, we have 30 students that are out-of-towners that come into Cheshire, pay us $3,000 per year. Obviously, it costs us a lot more to educate them. What are the state requirements on that? Not that I'm suggesting we shouldn't take them, but, let's assume one year it goes to 100. Do we have to take 100?
We don't have to take 30.
You don't?
No.
And you don't risk losing any funding from the state if you say no?
That I would have to look into. I don't believe so, but, the 34 overall total number of students we have distributed through the district, that's not a position where it's going to really sway added staffing for us. And so we take those students on to add value to the educational experience, to diversify our population, and it does generate revenue.
Correct, but the reality is your per pupil spending is $16,000 or 15 and change, and we're getting 3,000.
Sure.
So there is a cost to the town to do that. I'm certainly not advocating that we shouldn't accept some of these children, not at all.
Yeah.
But obviously, there's got to be some kind of a tipping point where you say, you
Well,
know, you can't take too many because then it becomes too big of a financial
Well, we're
burden.
getting there, and that's what, last year, this upcoming school year, we don't have any additional open seats.
So you guys regulate that internally, you say, all right,
Correct.
we don't want any more, and nobody can say,
Yeah,
yeah,
and
the state
council-
doesn't come in and say,
No.
you have to let them in, or we're gonna cut more spending.
No.
Or cut more funding, excuse me.
No.
Okay, thank you.
How do you determine which 30 kids? I mean, is there a
They do
process?
that in New Haven through a lottery.
They do, okay.
Just to add to that, when we accept it, when a child comes to us in K through 2, wherever he or she may start, we make a commitment to that child that they can go through our school system and graduate. So it's not a different 30 kids these are children that have been with us since they were young, and, we have had some youngsters that have graduated from Cheshire High and done extremely well. But we make a commitment to that student when we take them, that as long as you want to be here, we will keep you.
If anyone else may ask a question? I just had 2 questions. One was on the Bridges program. Is that part of your 529 count, or is that outside of the special education?
No, that's inclusive. of
So
that.
that's inclusive. Okay. Now, the other questions I have are associated with special ed. By my math, well, you stated, and the numbers show that it's 25% of your budget total, and it would appear that that's 12.5% of the total school population, so it's a relatively small number, doing the math. And doing the math, it works out to about $34,000 per pupil. Now, my question there is that's just the math. Is that reduced by some grants? Because we do have a special education.
Yeah, that was the excess cost reimbursement
right.
that I was talking about.
Which is how much?
If they take a look at the average per pupil expenditure for the state of Connecticut,
Mhm.
multiply that by 4.5 times, or is it our own per pupil expenditure?
Our own per pupil. So roughly, when you meet a $70,000 threshold, you get reimbursed.
For the money beyond the 70,000. So if we spent $120,000 to outplace a student,
Mm-hmm.
the $50,000, you would get a percentage of that reimbursed by the state. The problem is the state has continuously changed that percentage. And then they say, all right, they
I'm
fund.
really surprised.
I know it's shocking,
It's
but they
amazing.
fund you on a percentage of the percentage. So they say that, all right, we're gonna fund 38% of the excess cost.
But
So
that's
30
only, not to interrupt you, but that's only 10% of this total budget.
Right.
So,
right,
in a
'cause it
sense,
applies just
just
to the
to
outplaced
answer
students.
the question,
Yeah.
basically, is that it's very little reduces that total per pupil cost. So that's a substantial investment we're making in special ed,
Yeah.
which is a good thing, but it's also, it's attractive to other people perhaps even moving in.
Yeah,
You want to say something
and
like
I
that?
will tell you that it's a universal issue though.
Right, right. I-
It's
I know.
not unique
You
to
were the first
Cheshire, and that all communities are facing these challenges. That's why we held the summit
Right.
when we did, to try and look at how do we get a better handle on providing high-quality services to students who need it in a way that's more cost-effective for all of our districts involved. So how do we collaborate better? How do we, just in-house, provide more efficiencies? And that was a helpful event for us, and there's another one scheduled.
Okay. Anyone else?
Can I just add
Absolutely.
one thing?
I thought you were going to ask a question.
Can I ask a question?
Ask the question, but.
No, but I did want to go on record, with,
Do you like
This-
my tie?
I love your time,
You're Cheshire-esque, man. I do like that.
We're
So-
going to do executive on that.
in our budget, under our projected, we, did project that we would end the fiscal year, within our budget of $70,126,288.
Where are you, Vin, just for?
I'm back on the summary page, but the point I wanted to make is that the town council asked, Board of Ed, superintendent agreed that we are going to reduce our expenditures this year by $484,215. So that would be turned back to the town. So last year's budget approval of, around, just a little over 1%, about 750,000 is being reduced by these expenditures this year. So, we've been managing tightly as we discussed already. We've reduced positions, but we've also frozen at 60% our expenditures for items like instructional supplies, textbooks, technology to the extent that we could. So, and this is 2 years of that. So we are starting to back up on some of the purchases that we really should be making for the school system. I just wanted to put that out there, not as a complaint, but just as a statement as you look at our budget. It's been a couple of tight years for us, and I know that's universal to the town as well.
And thank you. I did acknowledge that in one of the
Yes.
earliest paragraphs in my intro that.
Yours.
Yeah, that your net was like about a 0.34% increase
2 years ago.
after you back that out.
Correct.
It was
0.69 the year before.
Okay.
So what kind of purchases are you saying that you're getting tight on that you haven't been able to make because of this?
And all the non-payroll expenditure lines, which most of those, fall into textbook, curriculum supplies, instructional supplies, library, media supplies.
Now, with that, then, your budget number of 7126,288 from 1718, that is the budget number. That's not, that doesn't reflect that reduction.
Correct.
Okay, so that's the actual, what was approved and what you are operating on.
Right. So
Okay.
that's
So the
484.
important element of that is if you back out the 484, you sort of have a truer number. Fine,
Right.
good, I'll insert that into this graph. Thank you.
That's all I have.
That was great. Anyone from the Board of Ed want to make a special appeal while they have a chance? I mean, Adam took the floor.
Because he was asked.
I know. Well,
Okay, I'll say something.
You don't have to.
No.
you don't have to, just
no,
give
I
us an
think-
opportunity, collaborative effort,
Right, no, the board should think, or I feel that this budget is it's a lot of money, of course it's a lot of money, but it's a responsibly developed budget, and, there is no waste, there isn't a lot of excess to work with, and, to the extent that we can continue to, cut expenses or retain costs, that's what's going on all the time. So, I just, I'm torn because I love spending money on education, but we're all really sensitive to what the town is facing, and we're not trying to add to the fiscal burden that's going to be imposed on our taxpayers, but there isn't a lot that I feel like we could cut. I know that Adam has a different view of that, but I feel very comfortable with what we're presenting, so I just want you to know that.
Thank you.
What's that?
I would echo what Catherine says, and I just want to be really careful with the medical reserve fund, because I was here when we had to put in 1.5, I think it was 1.5 million in here, which that in of itself is a huge percentage of the budget. So while we did reduce the budget 400,000 out of medical reserves, I would just want to be really careful about not trying to pull a whole lot more out of there. I think, yell at me if you want, but I think any huge reduction to this budget is going to end up affecting our kids in our classrooms, because as Catherine said, there isn't a lot of money there that is floating around that we can just say, we'll take it from here. I think we will see an impact in our classrooms with a much bigger reduction to what we've done.
Thank you. Anyone else? Well done.
The end.
Okay, great.
Motion to adjourn?
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Second.
Be happy to take